My nan, who I loved to bits, passed away. My dad rang the undertaker to come and remove her body from the bedroom. He said he couldn't come because he was on his own. He needed some help. And I just said to my dad, oh, I'll help. And he's like, well, you can put your nan in a bag. And I was like, it's not my nan anymore. Nan has died, and it's just the body that she was in. For me, there's a definite, exact line between life and death. My name is Ben Giles. I am a specialist biohazard crime scene cleaner, have been for 30 years, and today I am answering questions from the honesty box. Okay, question 1. Why did you become a biohazard cleaner? Basically, I was looking for a niche, something different. I live in rural West Wales where wages are pretty poor, and I was a window cleaner looking for an opportunity to earn more than a living, if possible. So therefore, I thought, actually, the worse things I can clean, the more I can be paid. And I thought, actually, maybe it's an opportunity for me to expand my business and have that niche market. What was your first death case like? A solicitor, actually, that we contacted phoned us and said, we've got a property, would you be able to come and clean it? A gentleman has died in the property. Luckily, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was a rural farm. And I just kind of blasé opened the door, and this swarm of blue bottles flew past me, and then went in and found out that this gentleman who died had been there for 8 weeks. Sadly, his dog had eaten his leg and his face, which was pretty traumatic to know that had happened. Although a dog is supposed to be a man's best friend, that's quite a bizarre thing to come across. What's the worst body fluid to deal with? Without a doubt, it's decomposition. So if you get to a scene where there's something's happened very recently, then obviously body fluid is pretty easy to clean up. The longer it's there, so in a decomposition, it just gets worse and worse. If you've seen pictures, you see a very, very dark black kind of a gunk on those surfaces, and that is normally the body fat that has broken down. It's mixed with acids from the stomach, various other body fluids, but the smell from that is absolutely horrendous. It's something that stays with you most of your life. That's probably the worst thing to clean up.
What does death smell like?
It depends on how the person has died. If we're dealing with blood, this strong smell of iron, it's the decomposition. It's just that strong smell of kind of rotting flesh and body fluid that you're hit with on every single scene. More often than not, there's this kind of musty, damp smell as well. But yeah, it's kind of pretty similar. I would love to have some pot that we could open up, but I think that would be too distressing. What's the worst hoarding case you've ever seen? Well, there's been loads and loads of hoarding. I've been into properties where it's probably been up to about chest height, and that's, kind of 4 foot deep. And we've uncovered bizarre things like trampolines underneath waste that nobody ever knew was there. We might come across 2 or 3 chest freezers full of feces, frozen poo, wrapped up in newspaper. And then we'll have maybe 600, 700, 800 bottles of urine as well. I suppose probably in the region of about 20 to 30 tons of waste from a 2-bedroom property is probably about the worst I've seen. And as you go down, then you uncover more and more and more different items relating to it. And then you get insects. So you go down and you get a layer of beetles and maybe a layer of worms, and where everything's really decomposed in the bottom, you get maggots and you get loads of different kind of species living in there. It's quite fascinating. Is it a well-paid job? Biggest payday? Yeah, it is a well-paid job, definitely. I've had some really amazing paydays really from it. Some of them are quite bizarre. One of the biggest paydays for me was New Year's Eve, when my phone went off, and ended up taking the call, and it was a whale, bizarrely, that was hanging over the bow of a ship that was coming into Portsmouth Harbour. And I just thought, who on earth is going to deal with a 22-ton fin whale on New Year's Eve in Portsmouth Harbour? So what could we charge for it? We ended up sending a team down, having to winch this whale with cranes that were on the harbour side in Portsmouth onto the side of the harbour, cut the whale in half, and then put it into 2 bathtub lorries and take that away to be rendered. But we kind of netted about 17,000 quid for that job for one day.
When it comes to houses and people's homes, how do you qualify what costs what?
So in a domestic environment, we've got set rates that we kind of put across the board, normally between kind of £500 and £2,000 for most situations. But we have to kind of put caveats on it, because when we're cleaning a floor where someone's died, we might lift that floor and then suddenly they're saturated into the floorboards, and then we've got to cut the floorboards out, and then it might have gone through that to the ceiling below, and then we've got to go into the apartment below and take the ceiling out or clean that. And so it just depends. It kind of depends on how bad it gets. What is the saddest case you've ever dealt with? Yeah, I think the saddest case is it either has to be when there's young children involved. We've dealt with multiple situations with them, and they're all horrible. There was one scene which was particularly harrowing. Was a gentleman and his wife. They're kind of sweethearts, been married since they were kids. I think they got married at 17, I think, and he sadly had dementia, both in their 90s. She'd gone up the street to go to the shop, and while she was there, either dementia or depression, he decided to take his life in the garage. So went into the garage and took his life, or tried to, on a rotating table saw, and put his throat onto it. And the fallout from it was awful. But not only that, the poor guy took out all his voice box, but didn't take out his jugular vein, and ended up surviving. So he then had dementia, no voice box, in hospital, and his wife had to then come and look after him and take care of him. So yeah, there's some really sad ones. Has this job changed how you feel about death? I think growing up on a farm, you see life and death. I never walk down the aisle of a supermarket and look at all the frozen chickens or fresh chickens in the cellophane and think, oh, they used to be running around. I don't see the link at all. As soon as that life has left something or somebody, what's left to me is no longer them. My nan, who I loved to bits, passed away, and my dad rang the undertaker to come and remove her body from the bedroom in my parents' house where she was kind of living at the time. He said he couldn't come because he was on his own. He needed some help. And I just said to my dad, oh, I'll help. And he's like, well, you can put your nan in a bag. And I was like, it's not my nan anymore. Nan has died, and it's just the body that she was in. And so for me to be able to put that body into a bag with the undertaker and zip it up and carry it down the stairs was really easy for me. I could kind of just switch off because that person was no longer there. So I don't know if anyone else feels like that. Probably people do, probably people don't. But it's that's, for me, there's a definite exact line between life and death. Which cases stay with you the most? What stayed with me the most was probably about the 20th, 30th property I went to. This was for the major crime scene investigation team, police force. They asked us to go and clean up a property where a guy had bludgeoned his wife to death. That was a really difficult one because I'm married like most people, and I love my wife, but we all have tiffs and arguments, and you get disagreements, and you may kind of say things you wish you didn't. But I couldn't ever understand how someone could cross that line and actually inflict so much pain and harm on someone that they would take their life. So that's really stuck with me, still has. I still struggle to deal with that a little bit. And there's another one, which I was, again, it still kind of sticks with me. We were given the keys from the estate agents, who said that this guy called him every name under the sun, said he hadn't paid any of his bills, he was a horrible man, he'd gone back to Turkey, but because he'd paid his bills a year in advance, some of them, they couldn't get access. He said there was a smell and could we go in and clean it and remove all of the furniture. So it wasn't set out as a biohazard job, it was just a house clearance, really. When we went in, I knew straight away I could smell the scent of body fluid, of decomposed body fluid. And all the electric was off. And I went round with a torch, and I found this door and opened the door and looked down with my torch into the basement, and this gentleman's body was at the bottom of the stairs. And that was really hard to deal with, because when I found out, he'd just broken 2 hips, so he'd fallen down the stairs, and he'd been there for close on a year. And I don't know how he died, probably starvation. But the pain he'd gone through, nobody was there with him. So that one was particularly difficult to deal with, thinking I would hate to be in that situation myself. Have you ever turned up and the body hasn't yet been removed? Yeah, that's happened. So I went to a property. I got asked to go into the property. The police were there. They'd kind of broken the door where the body was, which was bizarre. And you could see this window just full of flies. So it was obvious where it was. But anyway, it was such a terrible hoarder that all of the stairwell was like a tunnel filled with boxes. Then we had to uncover all of the things that had fallen on top of the body for the SOCO, Scenes of Crimes officer, to come in and take photographs of that body. It's pretty horrendous, that one. I remember moving a bag and the gentleman's foot came off. Had to put that back on so that he could, the Scenes of Crimes officer could take a photo. And then bizarrely, they had to send 2 doctors to confirm that he was actually dead, even though he'd been there for probably 10 weeks. Just looked like a bit of leather wrapped around bones. So yeah, that was quite a memorable one. How many times have you been physically sick during a clean? Never. I've never, ever thrown up. The first scene we ever did, we went to a property where it was a warden-assisted property. Gentleman had been living there for 10 years. His bath was full to the top with feces. His toilet was full with feces. The floor was just moving with fleas. It was pretty horrendous. Took 2 lads in there to help me clean it. One of the first jobs we ever did. And one of them went straight into the kitchen and just started cleaning. It's like this kind of pyramid of tea bags. And the other lad looked at us, and I had at the time full-face visor masks that I thought were the bee's knees, which were absolutely lethal because he puked up over his nose. It's sick. And he was choking on his own sick. We had to rip his mask off, clean up his sick as well. And he sat in the van the whole day because he couldn't come and do that work anymore. So for me, no, but for some of the team, yes. What's the worst case of decomposition that you've come across? Lots of different types of decomposition, and as I mentioned before, the body fat that you have, that malodor, is pretty horrendous. But you only get that obviously from a person who has got a lot of fat on them. I've been to scenes where there's been little old granny who's died who weighs 4, maybe 6 stone. There's nothing of her, so no fat. Therefore, the fallout is just really minimal. Other times, I've been to scenes where people have been absolutely massive, so 30 to 40 stones, and they've decomposed. And the fallout from that size of carcass is absolutely massive. We had a gentleman that passed away in a loft, bizarrely. He was a big chap, and the fallout from that was his body fluid had run all the way down to the ground floor, followed light switches, electrical cables, water pipes, and where it had hit, copper pipes that were hot, central heating pipes, it started to kind of bake, and then you had this horrendous smell in the property. So that was pretty awful, and the saturation, we had to lift floors on every level, remove ceilings as well. So yeah, that's probably the worst one, I think. But it's the bigger the person, the more the fallout from that. Do you see death as a paycheck? Yeah, this is a really kind of difficult question, I think, because it's traumatic. I've lost friends and family, and it's a horrible time for anyone. But it's also a business for us. But I'm also really understanding of what people are going through. So it's a really difficult time. I also really admire undertakers. They're incredibly professional. Their customer service is amazing, how they deal with loved ones and family. And yet, realistically, to them, every time another person passes away, that's going to afford them to buy their next holiday or their next vehicle or their next suit or garments or whatever. It's a strange place to be. In one sense, it does pay the bills. In the other sense, we are really helping family deal with the situation, I think. Does anything still shock you? Probably not. I don't think so. I think everything I've seen so many scenes, hundreds and hundreds of scenes where there's been the sublime to the ridiculous has happened, really. I've been to cells where They tell us there's poo absolutely everywhere in the cell, and you go there and it's just hot chocolate being poured on the floor. And then you go to other scenes and they are horrific. Sometimes when you go to a property and there's been a shotgun suicide, you have no idea what you're going to see from that. So it could be really simple, where there could be just some fallout from what's happened on the stairs. Other times it can be horrendous. So all the way up the stairs could be tufts of hair embedded in the walls and bits of skull, and you never know. So what are the physical dangers of your job? This is really interesting because it depends on the scene we're going into. I'll give you one example. Went to do a needle pick on a disused property in Bath. There was about 6,000 needles from a drug addict who had been in there. So it was absolutely needles everywhere. And you'd think that was the most dangerous thing. But the most dangerous thing was structurally the building was really unsafe. So as soon as we walked in, our feet just went through the floorboards. We have no idea what body fluids we're encountering and who they're from. We're walking into situations constantly where there could be viruses that we have no idea about, bacteria that we could be exposed to. We've got some tenants, if they're still there, like hoarders and stuff like that, people in those situations, that's quite dangerous. I've been beaten over the back with walking sticks, and I've had cigarettes put out on me, abuse thrown at me constantly from people who mentally cannot deal with the situation. So lots of dangers, from catching horrible stuff that people have died from to being surrounded by people who are either high or off their face or quite violent in those situations. What kind of training do you need for your work? That's an interesting question. When I first started, there was no training at all. In fact, I went on a training course where I was taught how to clean tomato sauce off of a desk. And that was supposedly my qualification to become a crime scene cleaner. We train people now how to do this work, but a lot of it has to do with dealing with what you're going to come across. There's some pretty horrendous scenes that people have no idea they're going to be faced with. So yeah, specialist training now is really important.
How do you train them on bodily fluids? If you had ketchup, how do you train them?
So we've done a variety of things. So in our training courses, we put down fake blood. We use fake blood as well, but we also use pig's blood. We use skin from the butchers as well, from animals, to be able to give them kind of a realistic feel for what they're cleaning. Lots of different surfaces react differently to different body fluids. So the training encompasses all of that. How soon are you on the scene to clean up after the crime has taken place? That's totally dependent on the crime, actually. If there's been no crime, so for example, if somebody's just gone to sit on a Stennis stair lift and missed it and fallen down the stairs, we're probably there same day. In a few hours, the person's in hospital or maybe has passed away, and we're there cleaning up after that. If it's on a roadway where there's been an accident, we've got to be there within 2 to 4 hours to clean up that road traffic accident. If it's a train, it's taken off into a siding, we've got normally 3 to 6 hours to clean that. And sometimes if it's been something really serious, such as a murder, then we don't get given the keys for ages. There was a case where somebody was murdered in a vehicle with a machete. We cleaned that vehicle down, but that vehicle, it goes into a compound, forensics work on it. It's very often not until it's gone to court, and then the vehicle is no longer any use to the specialist police services or forensics, that we are given that vehicle to clean. So sometimes it can be months before that happens. Best cleaning hack you've picked up along the way? In the domestic environment, I think if somebody just wants to learn something cool from this, if you're ever dealing with oil, so body fats, body fluid, and this might be sweat on your shirts, or it might be oil from working on your car, or it might be anything, you have to have a surfactant, a degreaser, which has to get underneath that and lift it. Something like a detergent that bubbles to get oil out, and that applies to most of body fluids as well. If it's something that is an enzyme, so enzyme-based or protein-based, then you need an acid or an alkali normally to get that off. So hydrogen peroxide is amazing for that. So we dab with that, and that will lift those stains, also like red wine, that kind of thing. Hydrogen peroxide is great. Just keep it in the dark, because if you put it in the sunlight, it'll go yellow. Lots of people spray it and then hang it out and it goes yellow. So don't do that. Is your own home spotless? My wife is an absolute amazing cleaner. I'm pretty messy, to be honest with you. I leave stuff all over the place, but she is amazing. So yeah, our house is not spotless, but she cleans it brilliantly. So yeah, easy answer to that one. How does dealing with death affect your mental health? I suppose you should ask people I spend my time with. I don't think it affects me. I think maybe on times I'm quiet if something horrific has happened and I'm aware of that. I've been to scenes, quite a few actually, multiple scenes where a family dog has mauled a baby. Horrendous, and I don't know how that family ever gets over that. I kind of don't know how to deal with that. So those are really sad and really horrible situations. For me, I don't see any massive effect on my mental health. As part of our training course, we do train people, and when they're doing that course, we've had people just burst out crying because we show them walkthroughs of scenes we've cleaned. So I appreciate some people, it affects them more than others, but for me, I think my mental health is okay, but I said you would have to ask those people around me. We'll probably think I'm nuts. How do you wind down after work? That's a good one. Right, so I've said through all of my career that actually the stabilizing thing for me has been my family. So for me, my wife, Lindsay, she's been an absolute stalwart. I love coming home to my house and to my family. My kids, Ollie and Maddie, who have fledged now and gone doing their own thing. But when I was in it, to come back to them as well was just lovely. Since then, I've got my own little farm. So I've got a herd of Highland cattle. And I love just going out with them, taking a comb out and grooming them and stroking them down and playing with them. They're really real good company. They don't answer back. You can say whatever you want to them. They're really good. And also I love going down to our local beaches in West Wales. So that's quite a nice thing. And then for me, a really, really good single malt kind of finishes me off and helps me kind of just think about